Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Getting back to the item that is before us. When it comes to accessing safe reproductive health care, it would seem that a patchwork approach simply won't work. In fact, the trend that we've seen in healthcare more broadly is to work towards more seamless, comprehensive healthcare services, not a patchwork, whether it's physical health, whether it's mental health, or anything else. But sadly, just as with the assault on voting rights, we're observing state legislatures across the country resolutely focusing on overturning Roe v. Wade. With SB 8, Texas has effectively done just that. So, no, we cannot rest in comfort believing that Roe will continue to serve as a barrier for state legislatures. Instead, we must ensure that there is a statutory right for providers to provide abortion and reproductive health care, and that patients continue to receive that care when they choose free from unnecessary restrictions. Simply put, this body must pass the Women's Health Protection Act and the EACH Act. My first question for Ms. Graves. Roe is theoretically still in place. However, restrictions to care already exist in some states, even while Roe stands. Leaving SB 8 aside, can you give us a few other examples of the restrictions to abortion people face in states that are hostile to abortion care?
There are several categories. So, there are other bans at different points in pregnancy that have been passed by other states that have been consistently struck down because of Roe. There have been delays, so, waiting periods requiring people to wait a certain number of days, so pushing access to abortion care further into your pregnancy. There have been efforts to shame people who are having an abortion. So, medically inaccurate shame-based scripts that providers are required to read. And there are also things that have basically shut down clinics so that in much of the South, many people have to drive hundreds and hundreds of miles already to access care. And all of that is on top of the fact that many people, if you are covered by Medicaid, for example, the Hyde restrictions mean that abortion care may be financially out of reach. If you're thinking about someone like me who, I frankly could afford to leave my state, I'm thinking about it's day 29 and the many people who wake up desperate today in Texas who are wondering what options they have.
Yeah. So, no, thank you. And just sort of build on that, recent New York Times article highlighted one of the Oklahoma's 4 clinics that now has Texas residents making up 66% of their patients. I know we've touched earlier on the hearing on what the impact of such an influx of patients can bring to whether it's this clinic in Oklahoma or others surrounding Texas, not only from a staffing concern for clinics, but it places an enormous amount of stress, to your point, on residents of Texas who can't afford to travel that distance when that distance is prohibitive. For those women carrying their pregnancies to term, while that would not be their preference, that may be their only option. Can you explain what the lifelong effects are of carrying an unwanted pregnancy to term?
I'm going to have to, I guess, put aside some of just the human dignity pieces of that, right? Like your ability to control your body and determine for you, there is a piece about that dignity that would carry for any woman of any means. But for people who are especially low income and who already lack consistent access to healthcare, the thing that worries me the most is our also maternal and infant mortality crisis, which is heightened in Texas. And when you add on that what we know about people and our ability to be able to be economically secure and to thrive, I am deeply worried about what is happening right now today and about the copycat laws that are passed that are going to come up and likely will pass as people have been inspired by Texas. We are in both a public health emergency in this country and also a constitutional crisis, and it keeps so many of us up at night.
Okay. If I may, Mr. Chair, I know my time is up, but one additional legal question for Mr. Vladeck. Texas's SB 8 not only deputizes, it incentivizes private individuals to sue abortion providers and anyone helping a person obtain an abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy. By shifting enforcement from state officials to private individuals, the state is attempting to evade legal accountability and prevent the federal courts from blocking this unconstitutional ban. Can you talk more about how SB 8 was intentionally designed to create such procedural traps?
Sure. I mean, Senator, really briefly, because I know that the time is short. There's an en banc Fifth Circuit ruling from 2001 that specifically opens the door to this by saying that it's not state officers, the Attorney General, the Governor, are not proper parties in pre-enforcement suits if they're not in charge of enforcing. But Senator, if I may, I actually think that really underscores why the conversation about SB 8 is about so much more than abortion. I mean, it is about abortion and it's about so much more, because for all of the complaints by members on the other side about abortion, about the debate over abortion in this country, which of course has people's dander up, this precedent, a universe in which Senator Cruz is comfortable with state legislatures cutting off the enforcement of constitutional rights that are still on the books, won't end with abortion. And a world in which our constitutional rights are worth nothing more than the whims of 50 state legislatures is not a federal system, it's not a system with the rule of law, and frankly, it's not a system that is going to be sustainable in the long term.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Senator Padilla.